Imagine, like, actually installing an industrial-grade hydroelectric dam.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare.
Right. You probably picture thousands of tons of concrete, a permanently altered ecosystem, and, I mean, a construction timeline that just stretches out for a decade.
Yeah, easily.
Now, what if deploying that exact same level of industrial power was as agile and non-invasive as downloading a software update from the cloud?
It sounds completely counterintuitive to literally everything we know about heavy infrastructure.
Totally.
But that paradigm shift is exactly what we are analyzing today. Welcome to our latest deep dive.
Yeah, we have a highly specific mission for you listening today.
We do. We are going to deconstruct the fundraising strategy of a company operating in, honestly, one of the most notoriously difficult sectors on the planet.
We spent the whole week poring over this stack of confidential logs, strategic pitch materials, and a complete interaction history for a startup called Stilar Energy and their flagship project, Energetik Heart.
Yeah, and we are tracking their exact movements and their applications from early 2025 all the way up to our current moment, right now in May 2026.
Our goal here isn't just to talk about the energy sector, though.
No, not at all. We are treating Stilar's journey as a literal practical blueprint.
Exactly.
If you are a founder or, really anyone who needs to figure out how to package and pitch incredibly complex, heavy-duty ideas to really skeptical audiences,
Yeah.
well, there is a very clear methodology embedded in these sources.
Okay, let's unpack this, because anyone who follows venture capital knows that raising money for physical machinery, actual hardware, is like a massive uphill battle.
Oh, it's brutal. Investors overwhelmingly prefer software.
Right. You write some code and you can scale it globally with zero marginal cost.
Exactly. But the moment you introduce thermodynamics, global supply chains, actual metal manufacturing, most early-stage investors just immediately pass.
Which makes Styler's ability to raise capital such a fascinating case study in persuasion.
It really does. And to set the baseline here, we are looking at the mechanics of a $1.5 million seed round.
Right.
They are targeting an $8.5 million pre-money valuation, landing them at a $10 million post-money valuation.
So the real question is how a pre-revenue hardware company actually justifies those software-like multiples.
Right. And rather than jumping straight into who they are pitching, the sources reveal this critical preliminary step.
Yeah, it's this foundational operational tool they use internally, which they just call the master pitch kit.
It's literally a single, highly structured file stealer _master_pitch_2026.docs.
Which is such a tremendous operational asset.
It is. Instead of starting from scratch every single time they open a new VC application portal, they have pre-compiled and optimized every possible data point.
Yeah, they have these distinct 100-word problem statements, 50-word solution summaries, pre-formatted financial projections.
And their core traction metrics, too, all organized as modular blocks of text.
I mean, I can see how that fundamentally changes the whole fundraising workflow.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Staring at a blank VC application form for hours, it usually leads to founders reinventing the wheel and just, diluting their own message.
But by using this modular document, they can populate a really complex funding application in about 15 minutes with absolute consistency.
Yeah, saving so much time.
But the most prominent feature inside this master kit is definitely their core narrative hook, the portable rivers.
Yes. What's fascinating here is how that specific phrase functions as a cognitive shortcut for a really dense piece of engineering.
Right.
When they pitch portable rivers, they're actually describing closed-cycle, modular micro-hydroelectric units.
Let me stop you right there, actually.
Sure.
Because looking at the technical description in the sources, I need to make sure we aren't glossing over a massive physics problem here.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, the notes say the system uses an initial volume of water, gravity pulls it down to spin the turbines, and then a pump recirculates that exact same water back up to the top to repeat the cycle.
Yes, that's the closed cycle.
But that sounds suspiciously like a perpetual motion machine, and you cannot cheat the laws of thermodynamics. It objectively takes more energy to pump that water up than the falling water generates.
Right.
So how does this actually work without violating physics?
Well, that is the exact skepticism a highly technical VC would bring to the table.
Well, maybe naturally.
But they aren't claiming to defy physics. They're essentially building a giant mechanical battery.
Oh, okay.
The system relies on pumped hydro storage. They use excess, super cheap energy from intermittent sources like solar panels during the peak of the day to power the pumps and push the water uphill.
Oh, I see.
Then at night, When the solar panels go offline and energy demand spikes, they release the water to spin the turbines.
So the closed cycle just means they aren't constantly draining local rivers or stressing community water tables?
Precisely. They just move the exact same batch of water up and down.
Got it.
And because it's a closed, highly controlled system, it provides what they call firm energy.
Right, which brings us to the core metric they use as, like, a battering ram in their pitch, an 80% capacity factor.
Yes, 80%. And they have validated this at TRL6, Technology Readiness Level 6.
Meaning they have actual functional prototypes operating in relevant environments.
Exactly.
Okay, so I understand the engineering now, but I still have my doubts about the branding.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, portable rivers is definitely a memorable phrase, but does a catchy metaphor actually compel highly analytical venture capitalists who are, scrutinizing a $10 million valuation?
It does.
It just feels a bit like consumer marketing applied to heavy industry.
Well, it works because it isn't just a marketing slogan. It's a translation of thermodynamic reliability into financial predictability.
Okay, how so?
Think about the alternatives for a massive mining operation in the Andes. Solar and wind are highly intermittent. To guarantee 20 and 47 power, that mine historically has to buy immense, expensive chemical battery banks.
Or constantly burn diesel fuel.
Right. So when Stilar guarantees an 80% capacity factor through these portable rivers, they are selling the holy grail of heavy industry operational predictability without the carbon footprint.
Wow. Okay. And when you pair that predictability with their business model, the narrative really clicks. Because they utilize an energy as a service model, or EAS.
And the EAS model is the critical financial lever here.
Yeah.
Zero CapEx, zero upfront capital expenditure for the client. The mining company does not buy the physical turbine.
Oh, wow.
They merely subscribe to the power that the turbine generates over a long-term contract.
So the VCs aren't actually investing in a company that sells heavy machinery one by one.
Not at all.
They are investing in a company that secures long-term, highly predictable financial subscription contracts from massive industrial clients. The machine is literally just the vehicle for the subscription.
That distinction is everything. It shifts the company's entire profile from a low-margin industrial manufacturer to a high-margin recurring revenue business.
Which makes the next phase of their strategy incredibly pragmatic.
Yeah, let's look at that.
Because we see in the logs from 2025 to 2026 that having a cohesive master kit and a solid business model is only half the battle.
Right.
The true differentiator is how they act as a chameleon.
Yes.
They take those modular blocks from their pitch kit and dynamically reshape their narrative based entirely on the specific thesis of the investment fund they are meeting with.
And this is a lesson every single founder listening right now should internalize. You do not broadcast a single static message to the market. You translate your core value to fit the listener's specific framework.
So let's trace this through the evidence. First, they target Preface Ventures.
Okay.
This is a prominent U.S.-based fund that focuses heavily on early-stage enterprise software and infrastructure.
Right, software.
Keep in mind, Stilar is constructing physical water turbines, but they don't walk into Preface calling themselves a heavy machinery company.
Definitely not.
Instead, they pitch themselves as a software-defined asset and the operating system for decentralized, firm power.
They deliberately lean into cloud computing analogies. They compare the orchestration of their distributed micro-hydro units to managing a network of servers in the cloud.
That is so smart.
They highlight their remote monitoring capabilities, their predictive maintenance algorithms. They are communicating to a software-focused fund in their native language.
Essentially saying, we possess the recurring revenue agility of a SaaS platform. Our hardware is merely the physical manifestation of our software.
Exactly.
Then we look at their interaction with Primary X.
Okay, yes.
This is the venture arm connected to Mat Barofex, a major futures and options market in Argentina with really deep roots in the agro-industrial sector. Do they mention software operating systems? Absolutely not.
No, the messaging shifts completely. With Primary X, the focus becomes operational efficiency, severe cost reduction, and grid independence.
Right.
They frame their technology as a hedge against the brutal volatility of fossil fuel prices.
Oh, because a futures market inherently understands financial hedging and operational risk mitigation.
Exactly. Stilar pitches the portable river as an insurance policy against diesel price spikes for agricultural producers.
And finally, they sit down with Savia Ventures.
The climate fund.
Right. Savia is a strict, deeply committed climate and impact fund. So Stilar just drops the financial hedging jargon and pivots toward pure, measurable environmental impact.
They lead with the exact tonnage of CO2 equivalent emissions they're displacing by replacing diesel generators.
And they emphasize the zero water consumption of their closed-loop system, which is a massive selling point for water-stressed regions.
They even formally align their narrative with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 7 and 13.
It is a highly calculated, strategic deployment of information.
It really is.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like a prism.
A prism.
Yeah. The white light of their underlying technology goes in, but they systematically determine exactly which color of the rainbow to project onto the wall for each specific investor.
I love that analogy. And the reason this chameleon approach is so vital is that venture capitalists operate under strict mandates.
Right.
A VC at a climate fund might personally love the financial hedging aspect of the technology, but they literally cannot approve a check unless the primary narrative aligns with their mandate to their limited partners.
And this applies to anyone listening, really, whether you are raising venture capital or trying to sell a complex B2B software platform to a legacy corporation.
Absolutely.
You cannot expect the person sitting across the table to do the cognitive heavy lifting of figuring out how your product solves their specific KPI.
No, you have to do it for them.
Stilar does the translation work for the investor, proactively removing any friction from the approval process.
But, tailoring the message perfectly only secures the meeting and the initial interest.
Yep.
To actually close a $1.5 million seed round for a pre-revenue hardware startup, you have to systematically dismantle the investor's perception of execution risk.
You have to prove that this beautiful theory can survive in the real world.
Exactly. And in the sources, that risk mitigation starts directly with the human element.
Yes. The documents refer to their leadership as the Power Trio.
The power tree.
You have Eduardo Tiravanti, the CEO, holding over 35 years of senior technical field experience, specifically in the complex Andean energy sector.
Right.
Then there's Parina Tiravanti, the general manager and CDO who drives the strategic modular design architecture, and Jacqueline Struck, the COO, who commands the supply chain and operational logistics.
And the pitch materials make a very deliberate point of highlighting the demographics of this executive team, prominently featuring their 66% female leadership.
They also focus on the generational diversity, blending decades of traditional engineering experience with modern, agile startup methodologies. I'm looking at this 66% female leadership stat, and, well, I have to be cynical for a moment.
Okay, go ahead.
Heavy infrastructure like mining, industrial energy, it's notoriously one of the most dinosaur-like hypermasculine industries on Earth. So are cutthroat venture capitalists actually moved by these demographic statistics? Or is this simply a PR checkbox that startups use to appear progressive on a pitch deck?
Sophisticated funds look at this incredibly pragmatically. I promise it is far more than a PR checkbox.
Really?
Yes. In the deep tech sector, startups overwhelmingly fail for a very specific reason. Highly credentialed senior engineers build theoretically perfect machines in total isolation.
With zero understanding of commercial realities or modern operational speed.
Exactly. They build a product for a market that just doesn't exist, or they move way too slowly to capture it.
Oh, I see.
Stilar combats this by demonstrating a structural advantage. Eduardo provides deep founder market fit. He has spent 3 decades feeling the exact pain points of relying on diesel in the Andes. Combine that deep industry knowledge with Purina and Jacqueline's agile, modern management capabilities, and you prove to the VC that this team can operate with the speed of a high-growth tech startup while navigating the unforgiving physical realities of heavy machinery.
That specific blend of skills is a massive competitive moat.
It is.
And they back up that team with what looks like a triangulated validation strategy. Remember, they have zero recurring revenue right now, which is usually a deal breaker.
Usually, yes.
But they counter that by laying down 3 massive pieces of external validation. First, they showcase a $500 million qualified pipeline of demand,
Which represents 796 megawatts of power from committed industrial clients.
that immediately proves the market is desperate for this specific solution.
Exactly. And second, they highlight their lead investor, Carbono 3, a fund that has already completed rigorous due diligence on Stilar's business model and legal structures.
Which signals to other investors that the financial and legal frameworks have actually survived institutional scrutiny.
Right. And third, they introduce a formal strategic alliance with Ausberger.
That's a legacy German engineering company, right?
Yes, with over a century of global expertise in hydroelectric technology. Ausberger's actively providing technical backing and the specialized mechanical components for the system.
Wow. This specific triangulation is a masterclass in generating FOMO, fear of missing out.
Oh, absolutely.
When a pre-revenue hardware founder pitches a concept, the perceived execution risk is astronomical.
There is.
But by wrapping their startup in the credibility of a massive client pipeline, a validated lead investor, and a century-old German engineering giant, Stilar fundamentally alters the psychology of the room.
The VC sitting there realizes if a top-tier lead investor and a legacy engineering firm have already audited and approved this, the execution risk is minimal.
Exactly. If I don't write a check right now, I'm going to miss out on my share of a $500 million pipeline.
They've logically structured their traction to make the lack of current revenue feel like a temporary technicality.
They established that this seed round isn't funding an experiment to see if the technology works.
No.
The round is purely the fuel required to execute a reality that has already been validated by the market.
Which leads us to the final and arguably most critical hurdle.
Many.
The money. Once you have convinced the investor that the technology is sound, the narrative is tailored, the team is capable, and the validation is undeniable, you have to present the actual blueprint for execution.
You have to prove exactly how you are going to spend their capital.
The use of funds slide.
Ah.
This is the moment of truth where investors determine if the founders truly understand the brutal economics of their own business.
Let's break down that capital allocation. Stilar maps out the $1.5 million seed round across a strict 18-month timeline.
Right.
A full 60% is directed straight toward the 1 megawatt industrial pilot. That covers the heavy hardware, the physical logistics, civil works, and procuring those specialized Ausberger components.
That allocation reflects the heavy lifting required to scale a physical enterprise.
Then another 20% is allocated to talent and operations, hiring the specialized engineers and the sales force required to actually convert that massive pipeline into legally binding energy-as-a-service contracts.
Makes sense.
Then 10% is dedicated to R&D for their software layer, specifically what they call their digital twin. And the final 10% goes to legal and go-to-market strategies.
Right.
Now, let me make sure I'm following the logic here, because that last 10% for legal seems unusually high for a seed round.
It does sound high.
But I imagine structuring a 15-year decentralized power purchase agreement for a remote mining operation involves staggering liability.
Ooh, massive liability.
It's not like writing terms of service for a monthly app subscription.
Do it again.
If your hardware fails and a mine loses power, the financial damages would be catastrophic.
We've hit the nail on the head. The legal architecture required to execute an ES model in heavy industry is just as complex as the mechanical engineering.
But I want to circle back to a massive contradiction in this spreadsheet.
Wait, what is it?
Earlier, we discussed how Stilar looked the partners at Preface Ventures in the eye and pitched themselves as a software-defined asset.
Yes.
Yet, looking at the actual bank account, they are allocating a mere 10% to software development, while 60% of the capital is being poured into concrete, metal, and heavy logistics.
Right.
Doesn't that massive disconnect make the software pitch feel hollow to an investor?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that allocation actually reveals a profound understanding of deep tech survival.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
You cannot cheat physical reality. Before you can monetize a smart software-enabled turbine, you have to conquer thermodynamics.
Meaning the software is totally useless if the machine physically breaks.
Exactly. They're deploying a 1 megawatt pilot in the extreme conditions of the Andes. It absolutely must deliver that promised 80% capacity factor.
Right.
If that physical hardware freezes, leaks, or fails, the entire company dies on the spot. No amount of brilliant predictive AI or elegant cloud dashboards can save a turbine that physically shatters.
Wow.
That 60% allocation into hardware isn't a lack of focus on software. It is a mandatory survival policy. You must secure the physical foundation before you can build the digital penthouse.
So the 60% hardware spend keeps them alive and proves the concept. But what is the strategic value of that 10% allocated to the digital twin software?
That 10% is the unicorn multiplier.
The unicorn multiplier.
Yes. If Stilar exclusively built and installed physical turbines, venture capitalists would value them as a traditional linear industrial services company.
Sure, with low multiples.
Exactly. But the digital twin, the software layer that enables remote monitoring, predictive maintenance, and the ability to orchestrate an entire fleet of distributed portable rivers from a single centralized dashboard, that fundamentally alters the valuation model.
It proves they can scale globally without having to place a senior engineer at every single physical site.
Right. It transforms a heavy machinery operation into a highly scalable, recurring revenue technology platform. The use of funds demonstrates to investors that Stilar knows exactly how to balance short-term physical survival with the long-term exponential growth required to achieve venture-scale returns.
So what does this all mean for you?
Yeah, let's tie it all together.
Whether you are trying to fund a piece of complex hardware, launch a new SaaS product, or simply pitch a radical new strategy internally at your company, the timeline of Stilar Energy from 2025 to 2026 offers a remarkably clear playbook.
Really does.
First, systematize your assets. Build your own master kit so you aren't reinventing your core narrative every time you face a new audience.
Right, save that time.
Second, commit to being a chameleon. Never assume your audience will translate your product's value into their own KPIs. You have to do the translation work for them, adapting your pitch to perfectly fit their specific mandates.
Absolutely crucial.
Third, surround your ideas with undeniable validators. Use experienced operators, robust market demand, and legacy partnerships to systematically dismantle the perception of execution risk before the investor even has a chance to articulate it.
Build that FOMO.
And finally, allocate your resources with brutal pragmatism. Fund the unglamorous foundation required to survive reality today while strategically investing in the scalable systems that will make you indispensable tomorrow.
It is a phenomenal example of taking something incredibly heavy, complex, and rigid and making it undeniably fundable.
And it leaves us with one final, deeply provocative thought to chew on.
Let's hear it.
Stilar Energy looked at something as ancient, geographically rigid, and massively centralized as a hydroelectric dam, and they figured out a way to unbundle it.
Yeah?
They transformed the concept of a river into a decentralized, flexible, zero-capex subscription service.
It's wild when you say it like that.
If physical infrastructure as heavy and permanent as a river can be unbundled and packaged as an agile service, what other massive, sluggish, centralized industries in our world are just sitting there right now waiting to be completely decentralized by a founder who knows exactly how to pitch the future?
A fantastic question for anyone looking to build something truly disruptive.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the heavy infrastructure around you, and we'll catch you next time.